Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a conversation panelist today, and we are going to be talking about navigating the current talent in today's landscape. My name is Michelle Nicole McNabb. I'm an event director for the B2B space, and we wanted to gather here today to have this conversation really talking about going back to work in the office space, and as there is this shift in employment and what the needs are, not just from employees, but also the relationship and the culture. What are people looking for? What are employees looking for? What is the workforce looking for, and management? How are all of these conversations coming together? So that's really the gist of what we wanted to talk about. Beginning of the new year, we are part of the best networking group, and I'm going to pass this over to Jeff to say a quick hello, who we are as a group, and pass it on to our panelists to give an intro. If you would state your name, the company that you're with, your title, and also give one lasting impact. Why are you here today? What do you want our listeners to really capture? If there's one message after today's conversation, what would they leave with? So Jeff, go ahead and take it away. Give us a little intro of who we are as a group, what's the common denominator, and then Dave will pass it over to you.
Excellent, Michelle. Thank you so much, and really appreciate everyone on this call being able to do this. We have, I hope everyone that's watching is excited because we have some incredible expertise here, and I know that you'll all be able to take away some nuggets that you'll be able to implement into your businesses. Which is always a wonderful thing when you're coming off of one of these calls. So briefly, the best of the best, we're a group of professionals who are great at what we do. And we network together with one another with the intention of having a go-giver mentality, what we can do to help other folks in the room. And we don't let people in the room that are selfish and that are there for themselves. The people that are in this room are ones that truly want to help others and see what they can do to help other people grow their businesses and expand. We've been meeting on a weekly basis since March 2020. So we're coming up on 2 years, and recently moved over to a bi-weekly cadence so we could make time for doing more of this type of networking and this type of information sharing. And we'll continue to meet on a bi-weekly basis for the foreseeable future because it's been a wonderful group, and we've had a tremendous impact. When you put 120 people in a room in an exclusive category capacity, some fantastic things start to happen. So if you ever have any questions or you're looking into the best of the best, we can get into that later. But for now, let's pass it over to Dave Nast so he can introduce himself, and we can go from there.
Thanks, Jeff. Dave Nast, managing partner of Nast Partners. I guess what I would want people to take away from today's discussion is how we can maximize our ROI, return on individuals, in today's current talent landscape.
Hi, and I'm Fiona Jamison, CEO of Spring International, and I'd like listeners to take away about the importance of employee feedback in attracting and retaining their talent.
Awesome. Hi, guys. I'm Heather Johnston. I'm with Senior Account Executive with Halcyon Solutions. What I would say is that it's clear this is a new landscape that recruiters and hiring managers are navigating in this hiring space. So I would love to hopefully give out some pointers on how they can attract top talent for their organizations.
Wow, that's great. So we have ROI on individuals, we have feedback, and we have how to attract. Would be three key takeaways that we are looking to have in this conversation as we move forward. So let's dive right in. That was great intros. Thank you so much for being here again. I'm going to open this up to everyone here on the panelists, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into each of your expertise. So to get this conversation going, how would you say that businesses are attracting, and maybe more importantly, retaining top talent in this challenging environment? And Heather, why don't we start with you? That was one of your main takeaways. So I'm going to put it right back to you. How are they attracting and maybe more importantly, retaining in this challenging time right now?
Thank you. Thanks, Michelle. So I'm being from the recruiting space. I'm going to probably focus more so on the attracting part at this point, and then I know my other colleagues here are awesome on the retention. On the attracting part, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's really a different space that we are all navigating, especially as recruiters and hiring managers, and trying to attract top talent. There's over 11 million more maybe now job openings that I read about. So candidates are not just looking at the job description. It's no longer okay to just say you offer a full standard full benefits package. It's what today, and if anything that has come out of this pandemic, I think we can all agree is that people have really reprioritized what's important to them. When they go to work, they want to know that they're making a difference. They want to be able to have work-life balance and not miss their kids' games or doctor's appointments. So as a business, it's really important that not only do you highlight, the career path that someone may have if they come to work for you, but really what is it, how are they making a difference in the work that they're doing? How can they make sure they're part of their community or give back to the community if that's something that's super important to them? Do they have flex time? And if so, what does that look like? You can't just say it. These are all things that, I think employers are really challenged with these days to make sure that they're outlining, not just, as I said, a benefits package, but really what is the full value that they're bringing to folks if they were to come to work for them.
I think that's a good point there, not just saying what it is, but what does that mean? Just like with the scope of work, if you had a proposal for a client, you would not just give the deliverables, but how are you going to reach those deliverables and really put into not just listing out, but explaining what that looks like. You mentioned it with flex time or community outreach. What does that really look like? Dave, what about you? What insight do you have here, whether it be more on the attracting and also retaining side?
Yeah, so we come at this from the side of workforce analytics, and we use, artificial intelligence and other solutions in working with our clients. So what's really key is right person, right seat. And the reason I say that is if you have someone in a job that's hardwired to do that work, it's going to be easier for them to exhibit discretionary effort. They're going to be less likely to look around, answer the recruiter's call when Heather calls to rip you out of that company. So when they do things like that, they're going to be more engaged, and when engagement goes up, so does productivity and quality. And when you look at a couple things that have happened during the pandemic, business owners are driven by fear and uncertainty right now, and they want adaptability, where the workforce has really been kind of driven by fatigue, and they want some resiliency out of that. So there's a natural friction there. So if we can help with right person, right seat, we're going to attract better people. Candidates will know when they're coming into an organization to interview that, hey, this is a place that values us as an investment. I'm a big believer in the grass is greener where you water it. So if you treat people like the investment that they are, that is something that's going to get some sticking power. Also, rock stars refer rock stars. So if you have some employees that are really killing it right now, they're the folks that are going to talk people into coming to work for them. That will help attract as well. But when we look at the science, if you can define what's required for success in a role, that's going to speak to the candidate. And also, when you set people up for success, they stay longer, they report out better, Glassdoor ratings go up, all that other stuff that candidates look at while they're considering going to work someplace. So I'm coming at it from the science point of view. Fiona's got even better science than what I'm talking about. But as you look at things like that, that will help with the human factor. And when I say ROI, return on individuals, treating people like the investment that they are, that's an intentional play on words. People need to feel valued right now. And the number one reason why people leave a company is their relationship with their manager. So that chemistry is key, in addition to what Heather said.
I'd agree with that, Dave. I think one of the things we're seeing employers doing is exploring and researching how they show up in the market, how they're positioned in the market. Do they have their employee value proposition, as you mentioned, clearly defined and articulated? And they're starting to use data to determine, how do we show up, right? How do we show up in our communities, to our customers, and to our employees? Because that's the first thing they see, right? When they're looking for that job, they're looking for, who is this employer? How do they make a difference? What value are they providing? Especially the younger generation is looking for a connection with a mission or a purpose. They're very purpose driven. And so looking for an employer that's going to make them feel included, make them feel valued, and make them feel like they're making a difference. So making sure your organization has a really clearly articulated mission and purpose and values, and that you embody those. And that's how you show up in the marketplace. One of the first things they will do, as you said, Dave, is they're going to check out how you're rated online. your social media presence on Indeed, on Glassdoor. They're going to talk to their neighbors. Do you know anybody that works there? What's that experience like? And it's the people that are leaving that mark on your social media presence. So be on top of it and be sure that you are showing up in the marketplace how you want to be seen.
Yeah. What we see also is it's not only the employers checking out the social presence of the potential candidates, but also the candidates doing their due diligence on these companies and where they want to work. And we'll dive more into that. Dave, you hit on something that I want to dive more deep into. And you mentioned, how can we ensure that we are putting the right people in the right seat? So you mentioned that comment a couple of times, and I think that that's worth diving into a little bit. If you want to really open that door up a little bit and tell us, how do you do that? Oh, I understand that it's important. Tell us maybe how, or what you're seeing, how you can do that. And maybe it's more data driven with your insight. Fiona, Heather, you may have some different experience, but I want to hit on that quote that you said, ensuring that you're getting the right people in the right seat. Why don't you dive into that a little bit more, Dave?
Yeah, we use different sets of workforce analytics. We use products like the Predictive Index. We also have something called Perception Predict, which uses artificial intelligence, and as well as the line of sight. So what these things can help us do, we can actually have stakeholders define a role for what's required for success. So now we have a benchmark. And now when we start measuring people up against that benchmark, we're going to look for fits and gaps and empower the managers with the information to lean into the fits and where the gaps are, help someone close the gaps in a way that's comfortable and satisfying for them. So on the warm and fuzzy side, it's a better place to work, but on the cold hard cash side, the business is getting the results that it needs. So for instance, it's very normal to give a sales manager sales data so that they can manage their team. Well, why don't we give people managers people data so they can manage their team in the same way? We empower that with sales. We need to empower it elsewhere within the organization. So we help our customers and our clients by giving them that information so they have some confidence. There's a scale on one of the assessments we use called confidence-based marking. The reason that's important, when people are confident in the solution, they'll do it. When they're not, they won't. And that's when you see things, not getting over the goal line, execution isn't as strong as it was, and the pandemic has greatly influenced execution. And execution is the way you can kind of fireproof yourself post-pandemic as things move on, because a lot of companies have changed and shifted, and their strategy has changed, and their makeup and org chart has changed. So I think I read somewhere for about 12 quarters of sustained growth. That's going to change how we do business. There's going to be a talent shortage during that time. So how do we do more with less without burning everybody out? Right person, right role is really going to help with that, especially when it comes to things like engagement and discretionary effort. So we actually use analytics to define those benchmarks, so that way we can map the company's genome. I say that, I put that in air quotes. Heather will appreciate this. She and I know each other. I used to be a recruiter back in the day. I like to say I'm a recovering headhunter. So long ago, when my hair was brown, I placed 17 of the doctors that mapped the human genome. And I talked to one of them on the phone one night. I said, why is this project getting so much press? And he said, it's not about curing disease, it's about preventing it. With the proper benchmarks in place, we can prevent problems before they occur. That's how we use the data.
Very interesting. And it's very neat to see, especially with technology and how to leverage that technology in the workforce. And I want to shift this question slightly, just so that we're covering both ends here. So maybe Fiona, maybe if you want to hone in, and Heather as well, your 2 cents, but how can we then use that technology to attract the right people? So Dave hit on, well, how can we ensure that we're placing the right people in the right seat? But in order to get to that step, we need that technology or that information and that data. How are we able to even use that data and technology to attract the right people in the first place, to have the opportunity to even place the right people in the right role? How can we go about finding and attracting people with that data?
Oh, Fiona, sorry, I didn't know if you wanted to go.
Go ahead, Heather.
The data is awesome. I know Dave well, like he mentioned. It's really important, honestly, for folks to, for businesses to understand exactly what the talent pool looks like, work with companies such as Dave, and I'm familiar again with Nast Partners and all that he has to offer. There is so much data out there that it's oftentimes difficult for companies, businesses to make sense of it. Analysis paralysis, I think is one of the terms I hear. In fact, I know that, and I'm kind of going off skew a bit on I guess more so again from the attracting side. Data scientists are constantly roles that we're getting in to fill. So there is definitely a need to make sure that we're utilizing and the data appropriately to be able to attract the right talent. But Fiona, I honestly was kind of leaning more towards thinking this might be more your area. Maybe you could probably give some more insights than I could.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think companies are using more and more data to attract and retain talent, and we're seeing them using it across the entire employee life cycle, from, onboarding, who's applying, who's getting through the recruitment process, who's applying, and then even who's declining. I mean, we've been doing a lot of research recently on declining applicant interviews to understand why are people turning down offers. We've found the right person, we've put an offer out there, and they're saying, no, I'm going to work down the street. And we're learning a lot through those declining applicant interviews about, what's put them off. Right. And it's often something in that recruitment process. So, maybe it took too long, maybe they didn't get feedback, maybe they didn't get offered the position they wanted. Maybe they heard something from their recruiting manager that they didn't like, that turned them off. We're also seeing companies leveraging more employee engagement data, not your traditional annual engagement survey, but quick touch points throughout the employee life cycle. Once you've been here 90 days, what was your onboarding experience? How quickly did you feel enveloped into the company culture? With the talent shortage, we've got a lot of warm bodies being hired because they're just a person. And then what's happening is they're leaving 60 to 90 days after they've started because they really weren't the right fit. They didn't use the kind of tools that Dave's talking about. And so, we're filling places with warm bodies simply to have people in role. And I think that's where mistakes start to happen. And we're even seeing in ongoing engagement surveys, things from long tenured employees saying, I'm not even going to bother connecting with this new employee because they're not going to stay around. They're not the right fit. So then you get this divide, and it's starting to break apart culture of organizations. And the last thing I'll mention is the importance of exit interviews. We used to feel that exit interviews were one of those things, well, the horse has already bolted, right? So why bother asking them the question? But you can still learn something from that experience. And if you line that exit data up with engagement data that you've already been tracking with them, you'll be able to see what were the triggers that led them to leave. And once you understand those triggers, you can proactively go and have stay interviews or conversations with those employees. If you're looking at your in-people data correctly, you should be able to predict who the next 100 people are that are going to leave your organization, or who the next 5 people are. And if you know that, why not go and have a conversation with them? From about 80% of our exit interviews, we hear people say, well, nobody talked to me in the last 60 or 90 days about my career or my growth or what my future looks like here. And so if you think about it, these are people that had they had a conversation with their manager or HR or someone like that said, hey, Fiona, we really want to know, where do you see yourself in a few years here? What do you want to learn? What do you love about your job? What do you hate about your job? That conversation could have led to any small kind of issue being resolved that would have made them stay. So if you think about all those people who may be on the fence of leaving, have a conversation with them, use employee feedback, leverage that insight, and adjust, right? Because it's a lot cheaper to keep someone than it is to go and hire someone and fill that role. So.
Yeah, these are all great points, and Fiona, absolutely, to retain, and that really goes with a lot of things in the workspace, right? And to adjust and use that data, not just to attract, but then to retain, and the importance of those touch points. And just because you've been here 5 years or 5 months, where are those heavy touch points, and helping them with the growth of their career, and helping those employees, especially those maybe new to the workforce or coming back to the workforce, and helping them identify, are they in the right role, or is it the company, but they could just perhaps be in a better positioning, especially as they may think that they know the exact role and their place and positioning, as we talked about, in the company. But as the company expands, as their skill sets expand, are they perhaps better in management, or are they better to be a producer? Or is it, where are they as an employee? They could be a great employee, just utilizing the wrong skill sets, and vice versa. Is it getting those touch points, and is it the company, is it the skill sets, is it the employee? And having those data and touch points and conversations can really help strengthen that relationship between the different departments and growth, especially in a workforce where we know that attracting and retaining are two different exercises, right? Attracting is one thing, and finding the right employee, but helping them find their place in that organization as they grow, as the company grows, that's a whole nother exercise, a whole nother set of conversations and data points. So I definitely think that we hit on that in really the first part of our conversation. And with that, I want to shift, now that our viewers, our listeners have had a little bit of content to really absorb, think about, I want to shift and reiterate, why are you here today? Who are you? What is the company? And what is this common denominator as we're navigating through the workforce? So I'm going to pass it off to Dave, then Fiona, Heather, and then Jeff, back to you. If you can reiterate who we are as best of the best, just to really help the listeners, if this is resonating with you, if any of the talking points, if you could, again, give your name, your title, the company, but this time give a call to action, not just the website, but who is it that you want to work with, and how can you help and serve them? If they go to the website, what do you want them to do once they get there? Is there a resource that you can help to provide? Is there something specifically that you and the organization is really focusing here in 2022? What is that call to action, rather than just giving your website and who you are? Who is it that you're serving, and how can we reach out to the community and our networks of those conversations? So Dave, I'm going to turn it back to you. Your name, title, company, what is it that you specifically do in your organization, and how and who can you serve? What is that call to action that we can leave with our listeners for you, Dave?
Thank you. Yeah, Dave Nast, managing partner at Nast Partners. We help ensure right person, right seat, and we do that by helping people stop guessing and start measuring. So we try to erase bias when making decisions around our people with using workforce analytics, and we have solutions for the small business, the medium-sized business, as well as the enterprise-sized client, ranging from organizational health scans to diagnose what's going on, all the way up to using artificial intelligence to predict success of their salespeople, and everything in between. So on our website, we do have a couple explainer videos for the three solutions that we have at nastpartners.com. But really, what I would challenge you to do is, when I say stop guessing and start measuring, we tend to make decisions around people by shooting from the hip. And if you do that too often, you're eventually going to shoot yourself in the foot. So if we can help empower people with a little bit of actual, unbiased data when making decisions around their people, again, empowering people managers with people data to make better decisions, it's going to improve the world of work. And that's what we're here to do.
That's great. So you have explainer videos directly on that website. Leave that website for us one more time. It will be in the show notes, but go ahead and say that website one more time. Yeah,
it's nastpartners.com, nastpartners.com. Thank you.
You got it. All right. So we will have that in the show notes. Make sure that you're checking out those explainer videos, and of course, reaching out to Dave if that resonates, if you're looking to find the right person, right seat, and how to do that. Fiona, why don't we go to you? Same question to you, your name, title, company. What is your role specifically in your organization? And what is that call to action specifically on the website, or where you want to drive people?
Sure. So Fiona Jamison, CEO of Spring International. I help work with companies who want to leverage employee feedback to improve their culture and how they operate as a business. And we work with small to large organizations, and we have a variety of listening tools, everything from your employee surveys, pulse surveys, online focus groups, any kind of technology to leverage employee feedback and make better HR decisions. If you visit our website, which is springitl.com, you'll be able to go and look at some of our blogs and insights from our research team as they learn lessons. They share those blogs on our site. There's also a mailbox where you can ask for additional information. And right now we have a self-assessment for DEI to understand where your maturity of your organization is in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that might be useful for your listeners. So definitely mail that mailbox and get that free self-assessment to find out how your organization's doing.
Wonderful. So more so helping those that have that organization, perhaps some of that sustainability, and how can we continue to improve through the feedback and through engagement internally. Wonderful. And thank you for gearing us to those resources directly on the website. We will have that in the show notes as well. And Heather, over to you. Tell us a little bit about you specifically, the organization, and what sort of resources will help our listeners specifically in those areas.
Thanks again, Heather Johnston with Halcyon Solutions. We are your IT staffing recruiting firm. So all that we do is technology, is find technology. And we've been doing it for a long time. I would direct folks to our website, which is halcyonit.com, or maybe even more, which might be better, is hopefully link up with me on LinkedIn. HL Johnston 2018, I believe is my link. Would love to meet people. Not only am I a recruiter, I'm inherently love to network. That's why I'm part of the best of the best. So I'd love to just meet people, figure out ways we could potentially help each other. But as Halcyon, all we focus on, again, is helping people place their ideal technology talent, whether it be in contract roles for projects that they might need to staff temporarily, or full-time permanent needs, and that's on a contingent fee model. So our goal is to make recruiting as easy as possible. We know that when companies outsource it, they are paying for it. So use us to our fullest potential, full service recruiting, from sourcing, screening, interviewing, setting up the interview process, everything through to onboarding new candidates. We try to our goal is to make it as easy as possible for our clients to hire technology talent.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And Jeff, before I turn it back to you, I want to brag a little bit. It's always easier to brag about someone else than bragging about yourself when it comes to best of the best. And, there's networking, there's different groups out there. And what it is that we're looking to do is to find those strategic partnerships and really highlight, and in conversations like this. So even though Dave, Fiona, Heather, and their organizations are all really in that recruiting, HR, they really do help to elevate and carry the conversation, help similar clientele, and really have a similar mission in mind, but their services and offerings are different. And this is what exactly the best of the best allows us to do, rather than being exclusive in certain industries or certain segments as some other best of the best similar formatted networking groups right out there. It's different in that we are truly looking for strategic alignment and strategic partnerships, rather than having some of these typical networking groups that we've maybe seen or if you've experienced. So it's something that if it's something that you're interested in getting to know other people and professionals, that you're looking for alignment, not necessarily just a referral network itself, it's definitely something that I encourage to check out. We'll have those show notes as well. Jeff, I want to pass it off to you as well to give a little bit more of a clear, direct, how can we get in touch? We do have a best of the best Gmail that we can leave in the show notes, but Jeff, I want to give you the opportunity again. What should we have our listeners to look out for? How can they get in touch with us? See if it's right fit for them, and what it really includes and how it's structured each week.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, before we jump into that, I mean, Heather, Fiona, Dave, you guys rocked it. That was fantastic. I didn't expect anything different than that, quite frankly. First, for our listeners, I would highly recommend reaching out to each one of them based on where their expertise lies, because they are truly the experts in their field, the best of the best, if you will. And at the very least, you'll have a conversation and understand ways to improve your business. And ideally, if there's a way to work together down the road, perfect. But I'd highly recommend a conversation with each one of them. Michelle, thank you so much for moderating this. You were fantastic too. I'm sorry, I'm going to give you kudos because I know you will not do that for yourself. That's kind of how we all roll in that go-giver mentality. But the best of the best to what had mentioned, this is a group like we talked about before, and I should have mentioned this earlier. It was founded by our colleague Ben Hecht in 2020. And Ben, pulled a lot of us together, and then we spidered out and pulled in other resources that we felt could add value to the group. So to answer Michelle's question, we do have an email address set up. It's BOTB, the first letter of best of the best. So botbnetworking@gmail.com. If you're interested in learning more about the group or potentially joining us, because we are category specific, not industry specific, but category specific. If you're interested in joining us, send a note over to that email address. Just let us know your name will obviously be in there, but your business name, the company you represent, and what it is that you are looking to do. And if we have an open category for that particular business type, then we'd love to have you join us. You'll be able to see this on YouTube, and we hope all of our best of the best members are able to share this with their network so we can get some exposure for 3 of our wonderful members. And we're looking to have this be the first of a variety of different topics that we're going to be putting content out for. Really, in a world that we live in, it's all about delivering content and helping people. And if we're able to do that, then we're all going to lift each other up. A rising tide lifts all ships. I think we all are of a similar mentality. So thank you guys again for a fantastic presentation. You all did, phenomenally well.
We're not done quite yet, Jeff. We have some more. It's almost like an encore, right? You think we're done. And I wanted to give that opportunity to validate, the speakers, our panels here, invite them to join the conversation, continue the conversation. And with that, we have some more good content here. With that said,
let's let it roll then.
Exactly. So yes, you all are doing wonderful and keeping the conversation going, making sure that we know how to keep the conversation going. The nice thing too is on YouTube, you can watch this or listen to this in double time. I know if I'm learning something, I put things on double time or 1.5 speed, but we have a lot of packed content in here. So I want to keep this conversation going. We do have another 10 minutes or so. So either put that on double time, keep on watching, keep on listening, because we're not done quite yet. So with that said, Dave, I'm going to turn this one over to you and keep the conversation going. So what do you find that's working, or how can candidates really help themselves to stand out? We talked a little bit in segment number 1, how can the companies use the data to attract, right? But let's turn it over to the candidates. How can we help them understand if they're looking for the right fit? What's going to help them as candidates to stand out to these hiring managers? And Dave, why don't you go ahead and start with that?
Yeah, and going back to our point earlier about attracting and retaining top talent, those two things are symbiotic. They rely on one another. So flipping the script a little bit, we help our clients write job ads, and we always tell them paragraph 1 should be why it's great to work at this company. Paragraph 2 should be about the individual they want in the role. And then paragraph 3 is, the requirements, 8 years of this, bachelor's in that. So if I'm a candidate looking for a role, and I'm going to go back and put my hat on to where I used to be an outplacement consultant back in the day, the number one reason why people leave a company is their relationship with their manager. So chemistry is important. If you sit down with the individual you're going to be reporting to, there should be some give and take. If you go to an interview and you're a candidate and the hiring manager does all the talking, that's not good. That means they're trying to sell you on coming there. There should be a give and take in a conversation. So if that's what you're going to be looking for, come prepared with a good set of questions. Know the company, do your research, do more than just look at the website, do more than just go to Glassdoor. Networking is key. And part of networking is, I got an interview next week at company XYZ. Who do I know at XYZ that I can talk to see what's going on over there? If you show up prepared, not only does it make a good impression, but now you can ask better questions and you can engage on a deeper level, and that's going to improve the relationship quickly. And again, that chemistry with your hiring manager is going to be so key. And then something else to look for, are you interviewing with one person, or are they letting you talk to other people on the team? I think that's a big deal. If you're going to be interviewing for a company where you're an individual contributor, it still doesn't hurt to talk to other people in that role. What do you love about it? What do you hate about it? What's one of the biggest changes that are coming? What's been going on there in the last 12 months? So I think that's a great way to differentiate yourself, is showing up with a great set of questions, showing up prepared, but also be open to what the hiring manager and how you're going to interact with that person, because that's going to be one of those things that's going to weigh on you down the road, or it's going to improve things down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Having those questions, you as the candidate are interviewing the organization just as much as they are interviewing you for that role. I'm going to turn this question to all of you, and to be mindful of time and for our viewers here, let's keep this to one sentence. That way it's strong impact, 1 to 2 sentences before we move on to the next question here. But this question is for each of you. Heather, I'll start with you. Is how has employee engagement changed since the pandemic?
Total faux pas. Sorry, I was on mute. I should have done that. What I would say is, like I mentioned, I think at the beginning, that employees are definitely reevaluating what's important to them. It's not, the work-life balance has become ever so important these days, more so than ever before, I should say. But at the same time, it's interesting because I have so many conversations that people say they're actually working more hours from home remotely than they had pre-pandemic. So engagement has changed as far as time spent actually working is more, but it's more flexible, and that is super important. That's what I'm mostly seeing in my talks.
Definitely flexibility of with that. So they're still putting in the hours, just with more flex. Fiona, what about you? What would you say, how has the employee engagement changed since the pandemic?
So it's interesting. Early in the pandemic, we actually saw employee engagement increase. People were happier at work. They were, because for the first time ever, they felt more communicated to, more cared for, more valued. There was more transparency for the organization. There was only one group that we saw really tank in terms of engagement, and that was frontline managers. These were the people who are dealing with all of the stresses of their employees that report to them and getting all that information down from them. So if you're an employer, I would say, and you're struggling with employee engagement, take a look at your managers, because a lot of the stress is being held right in the middle there. And so paying attention to what they need to support, what they need for themselves, and then what they need to support their employees and their team members that report to them. They are such a critical role. As Dave said, they're the triggers for people to leave. So if you're not paying attention to what your managers are experiencing, you're leaving a huge risk out there of your employees getting disengaged by the managers that they report to. So I would say take a look at your managers, give them some extra TLC if you can, and make sure that they're feeling supported and that they can do what you need them to do for your company.
Absolutely. And that's something too that we experience, not just in the event management world, but we talk about people management versus project management. So if someone is managing a project, that's a lot different than someone that's managing people. And there may be some overlap, right, of how you're managing people versus projects. Projects don't have emotions and feelings and families, right? And yet you have people management versus those working and managing the projects and keeping the activities going and keeping the projects and the tasks aligned is a lot different than having that face-to-face interaction and having those conversations and ensuring that the people management is still up to par. So that's definitely something that we're seeing as well. Dave, what about your 2 cents on that question? Is how has employee engagement changed since the pandemic?
Yeah, building on what Heather and Fiona said, Fiona's right. In the beginning, it was actually up and things were great, and it was because of communication. So communication throughout the entire organization is key, especially when change is going on. So I'm a big believer in what we call the platinum rule. We all know what the golden rule is, which is, treat others how you want to be treated or whatever. The platinum rule is treat others how they want to be treated. So understanding what drives their behavior. Some people thrived during the pandemic working remotely while others did not. So that's one of the other places we use the analytics, is understanding the individual, what they need in terms of communication, what they need in terms of motivation to keep that engagement high, because everybody's different. And like I said, some people really did well while others suffered, and people didn't know why. So if we can understand why, which is where the analytics come in, then we can engage with our employees in such a way that they need to hear things and communicate all the changes and the change in the strategy and what's going on here. That communication is key. And that's what drives execution, by the way, because where communication breaks down, we actually seen it in clients where the CEO said, we're doing this. And the frontline managers go, what? And then the employees doing the work are like, I have no idea what we're supposed to be doing. So if you can streamline that and then engage people in the way they need to hear it, the platinum rule, that's going to keep engagement high, and that's going to protect execution.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that we've noticed here as well that I want to bring to the panel, see if you've experienced it as well, again, in the marketing, in the event space, in the branding world, that I work with the businesses, and whether it be sales teams, the facilitators, the marketing teams, is brand. And I bring this up because I'm seeing more and more of this trend of how are these companies promoting that culture and promoting their brand is not just an external exercise anymore. Brand is not just a matter of expressing who you are to your clients and your customers and your consumers, but also the trends we're seeing is also brand and culture to potential hires. And not that this wasn't existent before, it's just more exposed perhaps on social media, whether it be videos and TikToks and influencers and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, and I could go on and on and on. And so I want to hit on that, and then we'll wrap up with one last question here. But Heather, why don't you take this one as far as how are businesses maintaining and promoting that workspace and culture, and how have things shifted with that hybrid, and what is the importance of that? And again, talking about the brand promoting of the culture workspace rather than the brand and importance outwardly of your clients and consumers. So paint that picture for us a little bit.
Yeah, awesome. I think, and I know both my fellow panelists said this in the beginning, that probably now more than ever, it's super important to have your brand, your company's mission clearly defined and outlined. You can't just post something and have it on your website or hang up on your office where nobody is these days. So it's super important to have that mission clearly defined, that everybody's bought into it. And not just from this is our company, this is who we are, and this is what we do, but really, who is it you're helping? What problems are you solving? How are you helping your community, as we mentioned before? Like, you're not just a business, but you're impacting all these people's lives that you employ and provide a livelihood for, and your community. And so all of that is super important to today's talent pool, young, old, everybody in between. So I think it's just super important to make sure, again, that those are all clearly defined and bought into. And I would say, just even from my experience at Halcyon for the past 2 years, I've met with and seen my team, who we've always been remote. So that part wasn't a shift for us, but I have physically seen my team now via Zoom and these webinar platforms more so over the last 2 years than I had for all the years previous. So I think that the video platforms such as Zoom and all the others that we use have been crucial in helping to maintain a workplace, the culture, and building your team and just keeping everybody connected when we're all remote. That's kind of what I've been seeing just personally, honestly, even.
Yeah, definitely. Before we wrap this up, I want to reiterate some of the talking points. And again, Dave, you mentioned something that you really want to ensure that the listeners, and this flew by, when a conversation goes, it really did, it flies by, especially if you're listening to this in 2 times like me on YouTube. It's going to fly by. Really action-packed information here. So thank you again. Dave, you mentioned that you really want the listeners to walk away with the data and the investment of the individuals, the return of individuals. I love that, the play on words, because we talk about return of investment, right? And so the return on individual, I love that play on words. Fiona, you talked about the feedback and the importance of touch points and staying engaged to retain within the organization, and Heather, the attraction and the recruiting and finding the right people for the right role. So I definitely believe that we hit on each of those talking points. We'll make sure that we have the show notes as well. And to wrap things up and talking points, right? And to leave this conversation, I'm going to open this up. Fiona, why don't we start with you, then Dave and Heather, closing points. And for the candidates, again, part 2 of this conversation is more directed for the candidates. How can they know, and what should they look for, and how do they know if they want to work for a company? What should they be looking for? What are some tactical takeaways, or what should they be looking for as a candidate? How do I know if I want to work for that company? Fiona, why don't you take this as our last question here, and over to Dave and then Heather.
Sure. And I think I'm sort of going to echo what Dave and Heather have already said, but I think candidates should be very intentional about where they apply. You know, find a fit that you think matches your values, your personal values. There's nothing worse for a hiring company to just get someone who just applied and didn't even do their research or didn't wait to figure out whether this was the right job for them. So be intentional as a candidate. Think about who you are and what you do best and what you love to do, and find and look for a company where you're going to fit those values, because then you're going to show up as a candidate who is passionate, who is excited to work with a company, and all of those positive things you want you to bring to an interview, you're going to have already because you're aligning it with your own personal values. So I think take the time as a candidate to figure out, what do you really like to do? You know, do some self-exploration, and then apply for jobs where you see that reflected in their ads, in their values, in their descriptions of who they are. And then for the companies, I would say, make sure that your external brand and your culture is in alignment with what your employees actually experience, because if those two things aren't in alignment, those employees that apply are going to figure that out pretty quickly, and then they're going to leave. So make sure you're in alignment with who you say you are and what you do.
Definitely. Dave, what would you say about this question is, as a candidate, how do I know that I want to work for this company?
Yeah, I think you have to do research, not just online, but I'm a big believer in the horse's mouth. So when I think of networking, it's not just going to events and eating hors d'oeuvres and sharing business cards. It's reaching out to people you know on LinkedIn, people you know in networking groups like the best of the best, and go, I'm interviewing next week at this company. What do you know about it? You used to work there, or doing that level of research. I mean, some of the best jobs I found in my career before I went solo, I talked to someone who worked there, either currently or previously, to find out what I needed to know. And when you mention things like brand is the space you occupy in somebody else's mind. So what's the brand that's being occupied in the employee's mind? The only way to find that out is to talk to them and just say, hey, what's it like over there? You know, you talk about mission, vision, strategic intent. That's really the what, why, and how, if you will, of a company. If that aligns with your values, that's going to resonate. And then that one-on-one compatibility with your manager, as we've all talked about, that's the number one reason why you're going to leave somewhere. We tend to get hired for what we know, education, knowledge, skills, and experience. We tend to leave based on who we are. So if you can address both while seeking a job, that's going to make a big difference down the road.
I love that, Dave. That is true. You're getting hired for that skill set, but then you become who you are. And going back to what Fiona said, finding that alignment. And Heather, your 2 cents here on this last question. And again, thank you so much for all of your time. Heather, why don't you wrap it up for us with that question? How do I know if I want to work for this company?
Yeah, I think, Dave, your point is spot on. And maybe it's because we're both from the recruiting space. I would say to candidates, my suggestion to them would be to use if you're working with a recruiter, use them, use them to your advantage. Ask the questions, ask for that feedback. What is this hiring manager looking for? Not just from a skills, but in what's the personality like? I've had people that we've placed in a particular company, several different folks, and I've actually connected folks that have already been onboarded to kind of give with folks that are interviewing for different roles, just to kind of reach out to them, find out what their experience has been like. But talking about the personality fits, especially with the hiring managers, who are the ones that you need to click with, is super important. It's not just about the skill set, but really a personality fit as well. So definitely use the recruiter to ask for the feedback. Who interviewed for this position before? Not who, but what was some of the feedback that you've gotten? Where is it? Maybe has it been challenging? What types of personality traits or is the hiring manager looking for? So that's all super important. Networking, talking, communicating, it's crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only what skill sets is listed in the job description, but asking what problems does this position solve? And does that align with the skill sets? And are those the problems or the day-to-day, right? So it's not just about the skill sets and the hats that we wear, but asking those questions directly to the interview interviewee or the hiring manager is asking, okay, I understand maybe I have all of these skill sets, I see that alignment, but day to day, what problems is this position solving, and how is that going to be measured towards my success? Because it's not just a matter of what tasks are being done, but then the alignment in, is that the impact that you want to deliver in your career, and the alignment, as Fiona and Heather, Dave have mentioned with that. Well, what a great conversation. We're going to wrap this up here. We stuck in around that 45 minutes or so, especially if you're watching on double time, you'll finish it up in 20 minutes. So with that said, I wanted to thank each of you panelists. We will have the show notes. We'll have the ways that they can contact both you individually, if you prefer, by LinkedIn, but also the organization. That way we have those resources all in the show notes. So if you haven't already, take a look at those notes down in the description below, and then also reach out to us. And the best of the best networking email again is botbnetworking@gmail.com. Or I'm sorry, at Gmail, yes, at gmail.com. And go ahead and shoot us an email if that's something that you want to hear more about, how we meet, who we are looking to connect with, and how that works. We will direct you over directly to Jeff. That side. So with that, thank you so much, everyone, and we will see you all again soon on the next panel.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Guys.